Brown.
So I should probably start off by telling you that I never wanted kids, ever. It seemed like the lame, like mom jeans, minivan, applique sweaters just wasn't me, and I wasn't really into having kids, so I was pretty dead set on not taking the mom route. But something happened between getting married in September of 2006 and January of 2007, and I came down with a mad case of the babies. And that's all I could think about, was when my husband and I were going to have kids. And so to go from being the very staunch no kids rule to ambushing him in my underwear on a peaceful Sunday evening while he was trying to get some work done, and I was like, "What do you want to do before we have kids?" And he kind of looked at me like, "Okay, slow down just for a second. What? And I was like, "What do you want to do before we have kids?" And he was like, I don't know, get a new job? And I was like, "Okay, well, I want to go to Europe, so those are our two things, and so let's make a plan." So over the next year and a half, we saved money, we chose, the countries that we wanted to visit and things we wanted to do. Chris got a new job. And so then in September of 2008, we took 2 weeks and we traveled around Europe, and when we got back, it was baby time. So in the beginning of December then of 2008, I took a home pregnancy test and found out that we were expecting a baby. So we were going to be expecting our first child in August of 2009, and so we were very excited, and it was so much fun because it was the beginning of December, so all of the fun Christmas festivities, and Christmas is such an awesome time anyways, and then to be, expecting the first grandchild on both sides of our families was awesome. And so then that year on Christmas, every Christmas, when my side of the family is together, and they're here tonight, hi. We get together and we line up on the stairs in my parents' house, and then my dad sets the self-timer and then everybody cheeses. And so I remember that year thinking, like, holding our little dog, like, oh, I wonder who's going to hold the dog next year because we're going to have a baby. This is going to be so cool. So then on January 7th of 2009, my husband and I had our first appointment with the OB to have an ultrasound. And so I was so excited because, of course, this is the first time that we get to see our child, and even though it's like a fuzzy blob, alien-looking thing at that point in the pregnancy, it was still, I couldn't wait. Like, I couldn't concentrate all day at work thinking about going to this appointment. It was going to be like this romantic thing where we sat together and held hands, and the tech would be like, "This is your baby," and the single tear would stream down my cheek, and we'd look lovingly at each other, and it was going to be really awesome. So we went in, and the tech, pulled everything up on the screen and started clicking around. She didn't really say anything much to us, didn't really point anything out, was asking me some questions about, when I thought we had conceived and whatever, and basically just kind of made a printout and was like, "You're going to need to go talk to the OB." So of course, I'm looking at him, he's looking at me like, "Well, what does this mean? Why didn't she show us anything?" So we got our stuff together and we went into the OB's office, and he basically sat down and looked at us and was like, "This could go one of two ways. The pregnancy could be viable and it could not be. Come back in 2 weeks and we'll look again." It's totally not what I was expecting. So I just kind of sat there the whole appointment thinking, like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Like, just make an appointment, get out, lose your shit in the hallway where nobody can see you. So it was terrifying, because to go from all of this excitement and this joy to being told that, well, it might not happen, it was a pretty awful feeling. So we waited the next 2 weeks, and just before we had that follow-up appointment, I miscarried the pregnancy. And I told myself I wasn't going to do this tonight. I've had a very easy life. We've had no personal tragedy. I've been very lucky. And so to experience this, it was devastating. It's one of the hardest things that I've ever had to emotionally go through. So this was mid-January, and as you know, the weather in Cincinnati sucks in January, so to go through a personal tragedy like that and then deal with like the crap of snow and people driving on 71. My husband and I said, you know what, let's take a long weekend. We have a good friend that lives in South Florida. We'll go stay with him for a couple of days, go to Miami and get some sunshine, and we'll come back and we'll start fresh. So we went at the end of the month, and we went down there to visit him. It was nice, and so when we came back, I said, okay, February 1st is our new year. We're going to start again. And so we started to think about trying again. The problem is, though, is that we were coming dangerously close towards the dreaded Christmas baby month. So if you conceive in March, you're due in December. And we have a lot of Christmas time birthdays in our family. And so I know the chaos that is around that, and I know how I always want to make sure that our Christmas birthday family members aren't getting gypped because, you know, Christmas is so huge. And so I wasn't really sure that I wanted to have a kid that was kind of stuck in that chaos of Christmas and have their birthday get lost in that celebration. So we didn't really try, but we didn't not try not to. And so in April, I bought a home pregnancy test and I saw 2 pink lines. But I was pretty sure that test was lying to me. So then I peed on 6 more and saw 14 lines. And by that point, at $15 a pop, I was literally pissing money away. So I stopped. So I had 7 tests, and I was like, all right, I think we're having a baby. So my official due date was the 19th of December, so I was like, it's safe enough, you know. We might land on somebody else's birthday, and they might have to share, but, you know, we're a little before Christmas. So as we were getting ready to, you know, thinking towards labor and delivery, like I said, I like to plan, I like to have a course of action set in place. And so I started to read every single book that I could. I watched every movie that I could about childbirth. I really was dead set on having a non-intervention birth. So I didn't want an epidural, I don't want drugs, don't bother me, let this baby come out the right way. I am a very physically active person, so natural labor was like my Everest. Like, people were like, you don't have to be a hero. And I was like, but I want to do this. Like, it was my personal challenge. So in preparation for this, I signed up for these hypnobirthing classes. And so for 12 weeks, we took classes once a week. So we took over 24 hours worth of hypnobirthing classes. And basically what hypnobirthing says is that you can have a baby and it can be pain-free. Now I know I hear my sister laughing because my family thought I was nutty and they knew who I am, so I can imagine what you guys are thinking right now of this hypnobirthing. But I was like, well, if this is something that can help me manage through it, it'll be educational, we'll try it. So we practiced meditations and positive affirmations, all in preparation for this drug-free birth. I hear you over there. There was no sage, there was no kumbaya. It was very, you know, evidence-based research. So hypnobirthing, we're preparing. We come up with a birth vision, which is basically a plan that you share with your care provider. So we shared it with our midwife, and she kind of read through it and approved it, and then they send it on to the hospital. And so when you go in, the nurses that are there know kind of what you're expecting to do, what you want, what you don't want. So we were, you know, it was very clear, please don't ask us for anesthesia. Like, if we want to ask for it, please don't bother us. We want the room to be quiet and dark and gentle and very, you know, peaceful. And so we entered into December, and my due date came and went because babies do not read calendars. And so on the 21st of December, I started to have early labor. So I was very excited because, you know, after a couple days of passing your due date, you're kind of feeling pretty down. So this was very exciting that the baby would be coming soon. But labor was kind of like cramping. It wasn't really painful, so I went to work. Things were fine. And then in the middle of the night on Tuesday, early Tuesday morning rather, I started to have contractions. So I was like, all right, things are going along, good. And I should also say, if you're planning on a natural birth, they tell you stay home as long as possible. Only come in when you think that things are like really close, because that helps you to avoid those interventions. So we're going to work, going on as normal. Tuesday night, though, things got kicked into high gear, and I started having these major contractions that were radiating all over my back. It was the worst pain that I had ever experienced in my life, and I have a pretty high pain tolerance, and so this whole gentle birth that I'm thinking about in my head is completely gone because these are major, major, major contractions. So needless to say, we didn't sleep at all Tuesday night, or I guess Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, the 23rd. So then that morning, on the 23rd, like around 4 in the morning, my husband was like, these have been going on for a while. You could tell he was starting to get nervous. He was like that nervous first dad that was like ready to pull the trigger and like, let's go to the hospital. So we drive down to Christ and they take us into triage and they check me and they're like, you're not ready to be admitted yet, so you should probably go back home. That was devastating because we had been up all night. We thought things were, moving along, and so to be in this much pain and, this much agony that it wasn't ready. So we went home, and the next morning, Wednesday morning, we went to see the midwife for a regular appointment. She checked me and she said, you're definitely in labor. We'll see you this afternoon, I'm sure. Take a sleeping pill, go home, try to relax, and we'll see you later. So we went home Wednesday. Still these terrible, terrible contractions every 5 minutes. There was no relief from them. They lasted all the way into the night. My parents brought Chinese over for dinner and we watched Inglourious Basterds like a million times that night. I think because my husband kept like stopping and starting it or whatever, but so we're still, we've had no sleep for the past 24 hours and now we're going into, the evening again and still these terrible contractions. And so around 4 or 5 then, Christmas Eve morning, the 24th, my husband was like, I think we should go back to the hospital. Like, this isn't stopping. I think this is pretty serious. So we go back and they check me again and they're like, you're still not ready to be admitted. So at this point, I am like, what can I say to these people to get them to keep me? Because I am not going back home. So they say, why don't you stay for an hour and walk around? So we walked around and I was like doing my deep squats and saying my affirmations. It was like, my body and my baby work in perfect harmony as I'm like experiencing like the worst pain of my life. I'm trying to believe it, but it's not happening. So they finally, after an hour, they check me again and they say, congratulations, you're 5 to 6 centimeters. We're gonna go ahead and admit you to labor and delivery. And I fist pumped and I was like, praise baby Jesus. And we got up and we walked into labor and delivery. My husband went down to get our bags and I hopped in the shower. And my midwife came in then around 7 a.m. and she said, do you mind if I check you? And she did. And she was like, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're not as far as they said you were. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So, so at that point we started to talk about, okay, well, what can we do? And they had realized, luckily enough, that the baby was not turned the right way. So normally when babies are coming down the birth canal, their face is facing your tailbone, so when you have contractions, it's soft tissue against your tailbone. Except my child was coming down with the back of its head, so every time I had a contraction, I had a nice hard skull pressing against my tailbone, so that's why it was so painful. So once they realized this, now it was time to start the interventions that we didn't want to try to turn this baby. So we labored on Pitocin, which brings your contractions closer together and makes them stronger. So we did that for a few hours, and it didn't work. And so then the next suggestion was, well, we know you don't want an epidural, and we know you don't want us to go ahead and break your water, but we might be able to get you to relax enough to where we can go in and manually turn the baby, and you can still have the vaginal birth you want, we can still turn down the epidural at the end, but let's try this. So they did it, and it didn't work. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty defeated, but I'm like, at least we're not talking about surgery yet. We've conceded, we've kind of raised the white flag, but everything's going to be fine. So around 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve, my midwife came in and she was like, I need to talk to you guys. And I was like, oh crap. So she said, the baby's heart rate is starting to decel and show signs of distress. We can wait another hour and see if you progress. But you haven't since you've been here. If you don't progress in the next hour, we're going to have to take you into surgery and have a cesarean. And at that point, it was like everything that we had not wanted to do, we had ended up having. And so this beautiful birth, this plan that we had made, the thing that we thought was best for our child was out the window. So they prepped us and took us back into surgery, and everybody was very festive because it was Christmas Eve. I remember the anesthesiologist had on like a Santa hat and jingle bell earrings, and they were playing Christmas carols in the OR. So it was very like festive feeling, even though we were like days without sleep and very exhausted and scared and excited though because we were going to meet our baby. And so we didn't know what we were having, and so they are getting ready to pull the baby out, and just before they pull the baby out, the song Boy Child comes on, and my midwife was like, it's gonna be a boy child, I just can't, I love this song. And so they pulled the baby out, and my husband yells, it's a girl. So they put her over the screen to show me, and she was screaming, and she was pink and fat and healthy, and she was just perfect, and it was so amazing. Everything that everybody tells you about the first time you see your child, it was all the cliches, it was awesome. So, we kind of spent the rest of that evening kind of like zombies because we had no sleep. And the next morning we woke up and we wished her first Merry Christmas. So it was exciting to have our first holiday together as a family. And what an amazing gift to get for Christmas, your first child. And actually, I think I tried to tell my parents and our families, like, what could we possibly buy you for Christmas that would be better than your first niece or grandchild, but nobody bought it. So we still had to give them presents. But it was such an amazing gift to receive, the best gift that I've ever received for Christmas. And the thing, though, that I think that was greater or equal to that is the lesson that she taught us in these few hours that we had just met her, and it's that it didn't matter how she came out, and it didn't matter how I planned for her to come out. And as parents, we can make these grandiose plans of what we want our children's lives to be and who we want them to be, and she really taught me it doesn't matter. It never mattered. It doesn't matter what I want anymore. It's not about me. And she'll come out in the end just as she was supposed to, and be fine and be the person who she's supposed to be. And to me, that was, equal to, it was the stocking stuffer of the greatest present that I could have received on Christmas.